Capes on the Couch podcast is for entertainment purposes only. Dr. Issues is a psychiatrist, but he is not your psychiatrist and does not have knowledge of your individual situation. For any personal mental health concerns, please consult your own healthcare providers. For medical emergencies, please call 911 or the designated number in your area immediately. Remember that you are not alone and help is out there.
Hello and welcome to Capes on the Couch, where comics get counseling. I'm Anthony Sitko.
And I'm Dr. Issues.
This is issue number 109, Levana Blackburn. An interesting character choice as selected by Ruby. Not one that is primarily based in comic books. There are some graphic novels in the world of the Lunar Chronicles, but this is one told primarily through real, actual, non-picture books. I didn't know that they still made those. I kid. I've actually been doing a better job of trying to read actual physical books as of late, primarily before bed to detoxify myself from screens.
Oh, that's an excellent idea. I really need to do that myself. I do read books, but yeah, I actually use my phone, which I know has just triggered a whole bunch of people saying, how can you read a book on a phone? Like, I don't know, very easily, conveniently.
Yeah, it is convenient to have the phone or the tablet read through the Kindle app. And I do have a good number of books on there, but there's just something about holding the book and flipping through pages that's very peaceful and calming. So before we get started, two quick things. Once again, want to remind everybody, email us your voice recordings for your thoughts on Batman. Again, try to keep them to about 90 seconds to 2 minutes, if at all possible. And if you can get them into us by February 28th, by the end of the month, so we can incorporate them into an episode. And we might as well just let the cat out of the bag, or the bat, as it were. March is our third anniversary for our podcast. And it is also the anniversary of Batman, who was created in March of 1939. And so we thought, what better way to celebrate our birthday than to do an entire month on The Dark Knight. And so as there are actually 5 Wednesdays in March, there will be 5 episodes all centered around Batman. And so again, without giving away all of the details, there is going to be one episode where we're going to take fan feedback, fan thoughts, anything that you want to talk about. That's why we're asking you to email us your voice clips and send them to our email address, capesonthecouch@gmail.com. If you don't feel like necessarily sending us voice clips, you could just write something out, a paragraph or two. We're not going to read a novella on air, so please don't send us your Batman fanfic. But if you have a paragraph or two about what Batman means to you and you're not comfortable speaking into the phone or what the case may be, just email us, capesonthecouch@gmail.com, and we'll read it as part of the episode. But we'd like to hear from you and get some different voices on the episode. So that is coming. So please get us those clips by the end of the month. Also, want to give a shout out to Ms. Yarborough's class. Ms. Yarborough is a teacher who contacted us recently and said, hey, I want to use your episode on Xavier and Magneto as a way to teach my students about the differences between Malcolm X and Martin Luther King. And I thought this is a fantastic idea. So I coordinated with Ms. Yarborough. And she also informed me that her students are looking to read some of the books from the Lunar Chronicles coming up this semester. So what better time to give them all a shout out and say, maybe when you're done reading the books, give a listen to this episode, see what you think. Because we don't want you to listen to the episode beforehand. We don't want you to spoil anything.
Oh, that is so sweet. That's really heartwarming. The idea that we're really enriching children's lives.
Yeah. No, seriously, like no snark from us whatsoever. Like we're being absolutely sincere when we say this. That is just really, really awesome. And so thank you, Ms. Yarborough, for reaching out, and looking forward to hearing some awesome feedback from your students. So let's dive right into Levana Blackburn. She was created by Marissa Meyer, and she was a character that was introduced in the book Cinder, which was published in July of 2012. She is the antagonist of the Lunar Chronicles, which is a series of novels all set in this universe. Levana Blackburn is basically the evil queen from fairy tales. And the cool thing about the Lunar Chronicles is that each book takes a different protagonist from a fairy tale and puts a spin on it. And so Levana Blackburn is queen of Luna, which is a colony of Earth set in a future where cyborgs and magic are real. And so she had an older sister who was mercilessly cruel to her as a child and pushed her into a fire, scarring half her face and most of her body. So she spends all of her time using a glamour, which is a way that Lunars can alter their bioelectricity to make people see things differently. Basically, you can change your glamour to look like anybody that you want to look like. It's interesting to note that the glamours do not work on video screens or androids or cyborgs. And so they will always see what is really underneath. So at the age of 15, her parents are killed and her sister ascends to the throne. But Channery is more interested in promiscuity and cruelty than actually being a queen. And so Levana has a crush on a palace guard at least 10 years her senior named Evret Hale. And he is happily married to a pregnant woman named Solstice. And this eats away at Levana, and she feels that she should be the one to make Evret happy. And so, unfortunately, Solstice dies in childbirth. So Levana changes her glamour to look like his dead wife in an effort to convince Evret to fall in love with her. This works about as well as you'd think it would, in that he's really, really creeped out that this 15-year-old girl is A, in love with him, and B, trying to look like his dead wife, except she alters it slightly so that she's actually more beautiful in her mind than Solstice was. And so that doesn't work. And she uses more lunar magic to basically persuade people to do what it is that she wants. And she uses her magic to persuade him to marry her and take her virginity at 15 years old.
Hey, man, if it's Romeo and Juliet, it's not that big a deal.
There is when there's a 10-year age gap. That's all I'm saying.
Hey, man, when it's a fantasy world, you gotta sometimes violate pedophilia laws. What do you want me to say?
Oh, God, that's not the way fantasy should be used in all of the ways in which I say that phrase.
Yeah, exactly.
So Levana's sister has a child out of wedlock, but then dies shortly thereafter. So Levana becomes queen regent until the girl, Celine, becomes of age. Levana says, I'm a better queen than she'll ever be. So she plots to have the child die in a fire so that she can remain queen. Spoiler alert, she doesn't actually die. She later decides that she has to take over Earth to get its resources, and the only way to do that is to have a marriage of convenience with an earthen ruler. So she has Evret murdered and then later marries Prince Kai after sending lunar soldiers to massacre the Earth. Also, that she's responsible for sending a plague to Earth, that her parents actually created this disease. She sends the plague to Earth to decimate the population so that she can show up with an antidote and be seen as the savior. And then they will basically just lay down and give her anything that she asks for. So she discovers that Celine survived the fire and was smuggled to Earth and is now known as Cinder.
Get it?
Get it? Cinderella. Also fire. So she tries to have Celine murdered because she is actually the rightful heir to the lunar throne. And at the end of the fourth book, Levana dies in a battle with Celine. So,
and they all live happily ever after. Wait, huh?
Yeah, not so much.
Oh.
So there's actually 5 books in the series. There's 4 primary books, and then the 5th novel, Fairest, tells the backstory for Levana and her sister, and sort of explains how she came to be the queen of everything. And just in the interest of full disclosure, that's the book that Doc and I read
Right.
I've read summaries of the rest of the books. Unfortunately, I don't have the time. I just talked about all the books that I like to read, or that I try to read. I basically only get through a chapter a night, if that. So I read the summaries of the rest of the books. I'm sorry, Ruby. I'm sure they're great and all, and I'll get around to them at some point, or I'll watch the movie if it ever gets made. So the issues, of which Levana has several. So let's actually start off with, I think that really the first chronologically is she's ashamed of her appearance. And so she's always using a glamour to hide from it. And one of the things that Evret says to her after many, many years of marriage, I think they were married like 10 years before she had him killed. And he says, I can't trust you because I never know what you actually look like. And you've only ever shown me the face of my dead wife. And that's not endearing you to me. And so she finally does, in fact, show herself, the real true self, to Evret. And it's the first time she's done this in like well over a decade. And her left eye is basically fused shut because of the burns, and she's got scars all over herself. I mean, this is a very traumatic experience to be held in a fire by your older sibling. But the scars, and this is going to sound cliche, the scars run deeper than just the skit from the fire. So, Doc, I'll let you discuss that first.
Sure. There are so many layers to this, as you just alluded to. I'll go with the first real obvious one. Anyone that's had a disfigurement via an accident, via trauma, a horrible event, war, domestic violence, just horrible things that happen, illness, whatever. The fact that a person survives that is on the surface level of comfort, but then after that, there's mourning. You no longer are who you once were, both from the experience and from what you know of yourself. Literally looking in the mirror, you may not recognize who you are. And that is very disconcerting. So that's the surface level. The next level after that is, depending on the emotions that you have based around that experience, whatever it is. If it's traumatic, then you can have all of the typical responses. You can have sadness, grief, anger, impulsivity to try and somehow get back or get revenge or just change the circumstance, undoing. We've mentioned that before, trying to magically do things to make them back to the way they were. All those things. And the thing is, there's no set guideline as to what direction you're going to go and how long this is going to be. If you have a minor scar on your face and it heals up, but you still have a small mark that's always there, stereotypical trope coming up, chicks dig scars. The idea that somehow that is endearing in one way or another to some people. With Levana's case, though, the idea that those types of scars usually aren't just involving, to flip it again, not just the emotional pain. Those things can really hurt for a very long time, perhaps indefinitely, depending on the nerve damage. Or a person can be numb. To flip it again, they could emotionally just become very distant, dissociate. All of those things can happen. The fact that Levana combines both the idea that she does not want the world to see what has happened because it's too painful, and another reason that we'll get to with one of the other issues later, in addition to the fact that the way that she deals with people is to make sure she has a facade. She doesn't want people to get to know the other parts to her if it's not to her advantage. And in a way, it definitely works with the magic and everything. She even ends up in these long-term relationships, and she has power through the family, but all of it's just, it doesn't allow her to ever get past the point that she can trust. She has to keep this up nonstop, because the second that she actually lets her guard down, that's when she becomes vulnerable. Like I said, we'll get into that with the other issues, but imagine the amount of energy, the amount of effort, both emotional and physical, that you have to use to do that pretty much for the rest of your life. I don't want to have a life like that. And as much as she says otherwise, I don't think Levana wanted that either.
Oh, she definitely didn't. She definitely does. But I think it's just a situation where she truly believes deep down that she will never be accepted looking the way that she does. And Evret said to her as much 10 years in that there may have been a point where he could have gotten over it, but now the lie is so baked into their entire relationship that he can't move past it. So she doomed herself from the start, unfortunately, which is a lesson for everybody. Be honest in your relationships. Don't lie to your significant other. Even if it's over something big, the lie is always going to end up being worse.
Amen. Preach, brother.
So the second issue is she does not have a very positive family life. Her parents were very, very distant, and her sister is incredibly cruel to her. Evret is kind in the sense that he is a kind person, but this is really the first kindness that she has been shown. And so as part of her sister's coronation, Evret gives her this little gift, and she meets his wife, and his wife is a seamstress. She has this beautiful quilt that she made of the earth, and it's very, very beautiful. So Solstice notices how much Levana likes it. And so as a gift to Levana, she gives it to her. I think it's for her birthday.
Mm-hmm.
It's from Evret and Solstice.
Yeah.
But she only cares about the fact that it's from Evret. And so it's this schoolgirl crush. And I hate to be as pejorative as that, but it is that sense of immaturity that she really gloms onto him and is like, oh, you love me. Just be honest that you love me. She's been so starved for affection that this little niceness, because you were nice to me, she perceives through her warped reality as, oh, he must love me more than he loves his own wife. And then, unfortunately, she just takes that and goes with it.
Yeah, it's the idea that the first time you have a certain experience, it's the greatest experience you'll ever have with that particular situation. In this case, we're talking about quote unquote puppy love. It's one-way puppy love, and that's, of course, a problem. But that can be true for a lot of things in life. And youth, by definition, is going to have more of those events than other points in life, but it can happen at any time. If there is, for whatever reason, a situation where you haven't had a social construct and you get thrown in there the first time and you actually enjoy that new construct of whatever it is, you may think that everyone around you considers you like the greatest friend ever in that situation, when they're just like, yeah, we're being nice to a newbie. It's cool. But yeah, don't take it too far. This is about the idea of intimacy. That's the part that throws this whole thing for a loop. Because if you didn't know what that was from your own family, or the only thing, because intimacy indicates how close someone is in proximity in addition to the intensity of the affection, she had an incredibly perverted sense of that, in that her sister really, really cared. She really lit a fire under her. Sorry. But
literally.
Yeah. So the idea that someone wants to have close interactions with you that are going to have a lasting effect, oh, she's very familiar with that. But that it can make you feel good? Oh, now we're getting somewhere. And I'm going to actually get into something from Chris Rock here, because this really is what I thought of with this entire situation. Some people, when they meet a couple, they say, oh, I want someone like that. In Levana's case, she said, I want him. There is a very big difference. And I'm not doing this to shame anyone, but I'm going to be real here. Everyone's been in awkward situations and hopefully never to that point. But if you have been, be honest with yourself. Do not go down that rabbit hole because you're going to end up causing guaranteed pain, either for yourself, for the person you're pursuing, the person that other person is with, or all three of you. So that's a recommendation. Forget whether or not I'm a psychiatrist. That's just common experience and reading enough about the world, not to mention seeing it play out. So Levana didn't really have that script to fall back on. So I wish she did, but she was kind of playing it by ear. And what ear was she using? She was using the one of, dare I say it, lust, in addition to inexperience. And wow, can those things be very good teachers? And by good, I mean experiential. And by experiential, I mean devastating.
Yeah, she's basically yandere. Yandere, I forget what the anime term is. Basically, the stalker with a crush who's going to go bat guano if anything should happen to her beloved or the object of her affections. Yeah, those never end well.
And since we have some students involved with this episode, if you ever have to read of Mice and Men, oh man, good old Lenny.
Yeah. Oof. According to Ms. Yarborough, it's a middle and high school class, so I'm not 100% certain if they've gotten to Of Mice and Men yet, but I'm sure they'll get around to it at some point. It'll be assigned reading. It is for everybody.
And it's a short book.
Yeah. I was going to say it's not long, but I'm pretty sure you're not allowed to graduate high school until you've read Of Mice and Men. I think it's in the national curriculum somewhere. So we've talked about two of her issues, which are related to family and appearance. The last one is a little different in that she spends time as the Queen Regent waiting until Celine is old enough to take the throne. Winter is Everett's daughter with Solstice, so it's her stepdaughter. Winter is also the heroine of the stories as well, in addition to Celine/Cinder.
Hey, wait, winter, you mean like snow?
Yes.
Oh.
I do mean like snow.
Okay.
I thought that was a reference to the blizzard that has been happening in the Northeast as we're recording this.
No, sorry. It's just to go with the fairy tale motif.
Yes. So Levana is the Queen Regent, and as she's ruling, even before Channery dies, she said, "You're not fit for this. You're not a good queen."
Which, by the way, a good queen. Right. Which, by the way, she wasn't necessarily wrong. Just putting that out there.
No, I will concede this. She does, in her own way, love her people. It's just that she gets so addicted on the power trip that she's convinced that no one else loves them as much as I do, and no one else can be as good a ruler for them as I am. And that's where things get twisted.
Yeah. This reminds me of a clip a long time ago that I saw on Facebook. It was a rabbi talking, and he says, people define love in many different ways. Take, for example, you have a food that you like. Maybe it's fish. You say, oh man, I love this fish. It's like, you love it? You make sure it's dead, you remove its guts, you then apply searing heat to it and consume it until it's no more. That's love? And just the fact that he goes through that description and saying, if you have relationships that you want to last, don't treat it like an eaten fish. Levana comes pretty darn close. She really, really has this idea that not just that people are at her beck and call, but that, I know it's a trope, but the idea that everything is a chess piece on a board and you just get to move them around. And as long as you continue to win the game, it doesn't matter what happens to the individual pieces. And that's all well and good if you get to reset the board and you get to use the same pieces over and over again. But lives aren't like that. And so That is actually pretty darn serious. I understand that anybody in a position of power is going to have to make decisions that may or may not harm some people for the greater good and whatnot. And that's why I don't have that type of position, because I would just lose my mind. But the idea that not only that you want that, but you're willing to sacrifice every other aspect of your life to first get it and then to maintain it. That is, on one hand, I'll say it's sad, because it means that the person, ironically, to maximize that just one tiny aspect of their life, neglects absolutely everything else. But then it's also, in my opinion, pathetic, because it means the person only knew that way to grow. Because by definition, if you have an increase in power, it means that you have more than what you did before. But what worries me is that that type of person doesn't know the term enough. And to apply this to real life, it doesn't have to be just a queen. I mean, it can be about money. It can be about attention. It can be about whatever it is that you like to do for fun. If you're a collector of things and, you just have to make sure that your collection is complete, so you even do it just before we get on this podcast,
I feel very seen right now.
Okay. Because that's way too vague. So the bottom line is, Anthony pointed out that there was a Moon Knight comic that he didn't have, and he corrected that. So good for him.
Well, it was just, I didn't get it yet. My point was just that I wasn't aware that Moon Knight was in this particular issue. So I said, I'll have to add this to my list of comics to obtain.
Yeah. And that's a very mature way to handle it. Obviously, I'm just using him for fun, which is a wonderful thing, which I have to admit I shouldn't do too much. I need to know when enough is enough. And so the problem with someone that is constantly doing this, think of the perfect storm that Levana is. She has to use up all of her time and effort to put on certain appearances so that people don't get to know her at a certain level, in addition to making sure that she has everything under control so that she maintains power and is able to just have people under her thumb nonstop. And the only times that she seems to get enjoyment out of it is by taking what others have and manipulating them to the point that they're not really recognizable. And the people that are involved eventually say, I don't really want this. And even if I'm still involved with you, I am doing it for the sake of survival and not because I'm enjoying it. Is that really the life that any of us want? I'm coming back to that theme because on the surface, if you look at it, I'll give credit where credit is due. She survived horrific things early in her life. She pushed through the idea that her parents weren't exactly what we typically think of as what parents should be. She had a loss, even if it was for someone that was cruel to her, die prematurely. She manages to continue to keep a colony afloat in very dire circumstances. That's all well and good, but man, oh man, did it just go so wrong in so many ways, and in such a hurtful process. And that's the thing that I want to make sure we don't gloss over. We get the highlights of what people go through to get where they are. Make sure you kind of look at the full narrative, and make sure you keep some of the other things in your life that are going to continue to make it enjoyable. Don't just look at the final destination. Please enjoy the journey along the way.
The real love was the friends we made along the way.
Yeah.
No, but in all seriousness, I do think it's important to focus on the notion that it's not just about the end result, that we cannot live our lives so that the end justifies the means. And unfortunately, that's one of Levana's big driving mindsets, is that as long as she's queen, as long as she has the power, doesn't really matter what else happens. which is certainly no way to live and definitely no way to rule. I think we saw that over the last 4 years. So let's take a short break, and when we get back, we'll get into treatment. Stay tuned.
Hi there. We're so sorry to interrupt your regular podcast listening, but we just wanted to introduce ourselves. I'm Bonnie.
And I'm Anna, and we're the hosts of Freudian Sips, a podcast about brains, beverages, and other BS.
We are a mother and daughter who are both licensed counselors, and we like to get together every week or so we can have a glass of wine and talk about whatever cool psychology things interest us and our listeners.
So if you want to hear two slightly tipsy therapists chat about historical psychology theories and the people who made them, questionably ethical experiments, mental health and illnesses, and other fascinating stuff, then you should listen to us.
So pour yourself a drink and tune into Freudian Sips on Spotify, iTunes, or wherever you listen to podcasts.
Cheers.
Hi, I'm Linda.
And I'm Jane.
And we have a brand new podcast called Bedknobs and Broomflicks, where we talk about witches of the entertainment world. From the horror movies Warlock, Suspiria, The Witch, and The Blair Witch Project,
to the more comedic or whimsical, such as Harry Potter, Hocus Pocus, Elvira, Mistress of the Dark, and The Blair Witch Project.
No movie, TV show, or book is off limits.
All witches, man witches, sorry warlocks, we're not calling you that, witches brews, witches of history, familiars, and witch-like activity will be discussed as we laugh and have fun talking about the wonderful world of witches.
So join us every other week for some fun witchy talk.
All witches welcome.
Hey, this is Cullen Bunn, and you're listening to Capes on the Couch.
And we're back. So treatment in universe, starting for Queen Levana, let's operate under the assumption that she is not, in fact, dead and has simply been captured, much to her chagrin.
Okay. So while I admit I am not an expert in this area, I would take full advantage of what I have at my disposal in that environment. I think that there is a way to use glamour as a treatment. And what I mean by that is not the idea of changing your appearance. It's the idea of revealing what's within. I'm not even talking about the scars, not the physical scars. I think you have an opportunity, piece by piece, to go over what it is that she's dealt with and say, which of these are worth holding on to and which of these are worth letting go? Which of these can be adjusted rather than just absolutely throwing everything away? The subtlety, the nuance, that's the thing that I think would be able to help her, because a lot of that got lost with what she experienced and how she decided to handle it. So this whole time, she has had the opportunity to use such an amazing tool. And rather than just keeping it as this black box, it truly can be the ultimate information processing system for her, emotional processing system, if she lets it. And I would gladly be that guide.
Interesting. Okay. So out of universe then, let's assume she is a royal or a very important person who had a rough family life, although I'm pretty sure if you're a royal, rough family life comes with the territory, at least from my understanding of British tabloids over the last 20-something years, and may have some physical abnormalities she is ashamed of. And also we can factor in second in line.
Dude, do you realize what you're describing? Maybe not the physical part, but do you realize what you're describing? You're describing the King's Speech.
Oh, snap.
You're literally describing the freaking movie, man. Well, not even the movie. You're describing his situation. Like the idea that you have a speech impediment, you have a stutter, you're not the first in line, but you actually have a family member that's willing to step away for their own personal enrichment, which is one of those, with the exception, of course, of the current situation with Harry and Meghan. It's not common. And he gets thrust into what he must consider to be one of the worst situations imaginable. Now, I am not a speech pathologist. I am not a stuttering coach. So no, I'm not thinking that way, but it was just fascinating that you the way you were describing it. But I mean, it doesn't have to be that dramatic. It doesn't have to go that far. You don't even need the royalty part. I mean, the idea of someone that has some sort of responsibility. I don't care if it's middle management. I don't care if it's, your first ever shift managing other people like kind of in the same level as you and you're a supervisor now. Or even there's been a shift in family dynamics and you have to take a greater role. You're now the sole breadwinner, whatever. So whatever the situation is, you now have more power than you did before, but there are significant limitations that everyone is aware of. That's the other key to this. It's not something that's hidden. So, under those circumstances, what is my responsibility? It's twofold. The first is allowing the person emotionally to acknowledge that it's okay to have, quote unquote, a fault. Because sometimes you just have to acknowledge that there is a weakness. That's okay. It's okay to be not okay. Just let that go for the time being, because you need the emotional calm first. Do things with a calm mind so that you get better results. That's the first thing. The added layer where things get more complex is going back to that quote unquote weakness and questioning it. Don't get me wrong. If someone is severely scarred and burned on that half of their body, that's true. They are never going to be the same ever again. But if the person says, I lost weakness, let's say on my right side, okay, did you lose the ability to use your arm? Are you still doing physical therapy? What can you do? What do you still utilize of what's left? Because sometimes that part gets neglected. The idea that you lost something becomes the idea that you lost it all. And I want to make sure a person doesn't have to go down that road if it's not necessary. So putting that together is actually very subtle, because there is going to be an opportunity for a transition at some point. A lot of times when it comes to rational emotive behavioral therapy and cognitive behavioral therapy, the first thing you're doing is letting the person develop the type of cognitive skills so that they can adjust with things they can't change. The next step, of course, in the Serenity Prayer is, by the way, you can change more than you think. So this is typically a longer process. It's not something that happens overnight. And you really have to be careful with the buy-in, because heaven forbid, if you as a therapist, if you push to the point that the person has a setback, they'll say, see, I knew that's ridiculous. You were totally wrong in the first place. You can really break that alliance, and you don't want to crush that rapport. But when done properly, it's amazing what people later on come to the realization, sometimes without even recognizing that the therapist had anything to do with it, that they have done way more than they ever thought possible. So I would definitely look at it that way. Look at the feedback from the people around them, because the idea if they're responsible for others, that you have to recognize what they're going through as well. And hopefully there would be enough candor that if there are things that the person is fearful of, that they're getting that feedback. So to bring it back to Levana herself, there is a good chance, unfortunately, that some people would make wrong comments or be completely insensitive to her scars. And that's not right, but it does happen. And our goal then would be to help her process that and be able to not incorporate that as a negative, but just as another example of something that shows how strong she is to survive yet again. So that's pretty much a summary of what I'd look for in real life cases. And once again, the very first step is the one that I focus on the inpatient unit, and then a lot of the other stuff comes on the outpatient side.
Cool. Not cool, but just the idea that you're looking at this from inpatient versus the outpatient side. And as you have extensive experience in both, I suppose it's only fair that you would sort of look at it from that angle. I dig it. So we're going to take all of this, and with the help of our friend Brittney from Popcorn Psychology, we're going to get Levana Blackburn on Dr. Issues' couch.
Hello, Queen Levana. I'm Dr. Issues.
How dare you even speak to me?
So it's going to be one of those sessions.
You have no template for me. You have nothing.
I'm a peon and nobody got it. I'm glad we're done.
We're not done unless I say we're done.
So, are we done? Queen, I await your command.
Sarcasm. From a professional? I'm disappointed.
How can you be disappointed when you had no expectations to begin with?
I'm not exactly here of my own free will. Someone who shall remain nameless got lucky, and now I'm here with you.
Was it luck or just proper planning?
Proper planning means there are no loose ends. I'm still around, and they don't even have the courtesy to send someone who understands an ounce of what's going on.
Does that mean I get to really do tabula rasa this time? Sweet! It's been so long. Look, all I know from the briefing is that people get sick, they die, and you have something to do with it. Quite the legacy.
When others die, it's because they're weak. Nothing more, nothing less.
So everybody except your kind. That's really myopic, wouldn't you say? How can you keep the world running with a small amount of survivors?
As if that's something you need to know. I don't mind watching the world burn, as long as I get to build from the ashes.
Anybody get to come along for that rebuilding?
Anybody I deem worthy.
So who makes the list so far?
Not you.
Oh, thank goodness.
You're mocking me again. You're saying you'd rather risk death than survive in a world with me as the ultimate queen?
I'm saying that I have no desire to spend time doing sessions with someone who's disinterested in those around her except for using them as playthings.
You find me disturbing then?
No, just bitter. But your file says there's something that draws people to you, and I'm fairly perceptive at this point, and your majesty, I just don't see it.
I've spent my whole life crafting an image of perfection, beauty, grace, elegance. You're a fool if you don't know the royal bloodline from whence I came.
About that, it doesn't add up. Where's the family symmetry, the strengthening of a dynasty over generations? I mean, sure, you're in charge, but at what cost?
There is no price I would not pay to ensure the survival of Luna. This foul planet has resources which could save my people and establish its dominance for centuries. If creatures like you have to suffer or die in furtherance of this, it is of no concern to me.
But what price have you paid already? Maybe I was too flippant earlier. I mean, bitterness is just a shadow under pain. What's hurting you?
You don't get to pick and choose when to care about pain. I sealed that away a long time ago.
Hid it, you mean?
Erased it.
Then why does it show through with every passing word?
You do seem to ignore the surface, don't you? Very well. If you want to see the truth behind my pain, let's start here first. Now, do you see?
How did you manage to look like Michelle Obama?
Curious. That was supposed to be your wife. I saw her picture when you were looking for something in your pocket.
This is awkward. Where are you going with this?
I'm trying to show you that things are not what they seem. You truly don't notice how powerful I am at making dreams come true, especially mine.
So you get what you want by showing people what you think they want.
I get what I deserve by granting people the essence of my perfection.
Well, I have to admit, your ability to survive under such torture or whatever it was is impressive.
What torture?
Sorry. Faulty assumption. Was it an accident?
How could you know that? Who sent you?
Huh? I mean, it's a minor scar on your cheek, relatively speaking. It's not that big a deal.
You're not capable of ignoring glamour.
Well, I don't like tabloids, so usually celebrities just fly under my radar.
You imbecile. How can a pathetic weakling like you see through such power? I've had men wrapped around my finger and squashed under my heel. I will have this world begging for my lead. Your hubris will be your undoing. Mark my words.
Okay. You know, I do know a dermatologist that... Hey, did you always have that veil?
It's more mysterious this way. For once, some outsider might have a use if what you did wasn't just luck.
Seeing through the emotional layers of a person? Nah, it's definitely years of skill. Although, from what I gather, you'll have plenty of time to work on that skill yourself.
I will not be forced to stay here one moment longer. You will release me now.
Sorry, it's not my call to let you out. Now, if you look like Beyonce, maybe we could talk.
Is this to your liking?
Wow, you really pulled it off. Now I can pull this off. Beyonce.
No, come back here. I will destroy you.
Wow, so she got you bodied, huh?
That's one way to look at it, I guess.
Yeah. Not the best pun, I'm sorry. It's not up to your usual snuff. So, recommended reading is Cinder, the first book of the series, and Fairest. Fairest is all about Levana and her rise to power. And then Cinder is the first book in the Lunar Chronicles that we really get exposed to Levana and who she is and just how deep the evil goes. So upcoming episodes are Superman Red Sun, Mojo, and then the first of our Batman theme episodes, and more on that to come next week. So we've got a review read. Mike Buhtanic gave us 5 stars and said, combining psychiatry and superheroes, what a great concept. I listened to the Maxwell Lord episode and loved it. Definitely going to go through the backlog. Would recommend completely. Check it out. So that review came to us on Podchaser. You can review us on Podchaser or Apple Podcasts. I think Stitcher as well. And as we always say, if you leave us a rating and then send us a screen cap of that rating along with your address and you email us at capesonthecouch@gmail.com, we will send you a sticker. You can find all of our episodes on our website, capesonthecouch.com. We are on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Capes on the Couch. Been doing a lot more posting on the Instagram lately, and I think that's one of the reasons why, if I can just humble brag for a moment, we surpassed our previous download record, monthly download record by about 1,000 in the month of January. So I would like to hope that at least some of that is due to the increased social media presence that we have. But in any case, thank you to all of our new fans, to our new subscribers. We appreciate you and hope that you stick around because, like I said, we've got some really cool stuff planned for 2021. So, Doc?
I don't really have much of a pun, just an observation. With what her sister did with her cruelty, she was watching Levana Black burn. There are no words. So for Doc Issues, I'm Anthony Sitko. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next week. Capes on the Couch podcast is for entertainment purposes only. Dr. Issues is a psychiatrist, but he is not your psychiatrist and does not have knowledge of your individual situation. For any personal mental health concerns, please consult your own healthcare providers. For medical emergencies, please call 911 or the designated number in your area immediately. Remember that you are not alone and help is out there.